Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland. I've got Alana Stott with me today. I'm sorry, Alana. How are you?
Oh, it's okay. I'm completely used to that. Thank you very much.
I told myself I wasn't going to do that, and here I did it. Be careful what we tell ourselves, right?
I know. Well, my maiden name was Gilliland, so I thought Stott would be an upgrade, but it's not.
It's right. It's just as hard, right? So where are you calling in from?
I'm in California right now.
Okay. Very nice. How's California? Weather good?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, it's starting to cool down a bit now, so I'm getting. I mean, the cool down here is still like super hot for Scotland, so.
Right. Yeah, I was just in Oregon golfing last week, and they said they don't even have air conditioners up there. And like it was like 65 was the high, and they said that was hot for them. So we hit the jackpot. So that was good. Weather was amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
good. Well, if you can, go ahead.
Pardon me. No, I don't mind it, but I do like the cooler temperatures for sure.
Absolutely. So if you can, give us a little background. What's made you the woman you are today? You've got a lot of stuff going on, and we'll get to that and see your books back there in the background. And Kelly Sharon spoke very highly of you and said you got to get her on the podcast. And then I saw you were in St. Louis recently, and we're at a women in business event. You met Katie Collier. So it's just a small world. It just continues to amaze me. But if you can, just kind of give us a lay of the land. What's made you the woman you are today?
Super small world, absolutely. Well, I was born in Aberdeen, Scotland, which is a small city in Scotland, but it's also the oil and gas capital of Europe, so it's small but mighty, I guess. I grew up in what would be kind of more of we call it a council estate. I guess you guys mean like the kind of ghetto-y kind of areas. So it was kind of a city that was wealthy and poor. That was it. It had no real middle ground. It was that. My mum was a single mum, so we kind of grew up that we had to look after ourselves. And she provided the basic needs, which was always met for us, but everything else we had to work on ourselves. So I started work when I was 11, and that really was just a job that I guess it got me from nothing to just being able to do like simple things. So they didn't actually pay me in this first job that I worked as, and they would pay me in food, but it was really cool food, so it was something a bit different from what I was used to. But what I did do was I used that experience to learn about basics like customer service, how to operate cash, all these kind of things. And what that allowed then was when I was 12, I applied for a job and got this job in a fast food place. But it was like a small kind of independent run fast food place, and the guy that ran it was an alcoholic. So he used to disappear every lunchtime. As soon as the pub would open, he went. So I ended up pretty much just running this little place by myself and having to really quickly learn things like it was fish and chips, so you were using a fryer and everything. So even those simple things at 12 years old, you were having to quickly learn how to use these types of things, which then led me on to my next job, and then again I was paid a bit more. And then a job came up when I was 13 in telesales, but my brother wanted this job. Again, he wanted to start earning some money for himself. So I said I would call the organisation for him because he was too nervous to do it, which doesn't bode well for telesales, to be honest. I called up the lady, and she actually ended up offering me a job while I was on the phone. So at 13, I got this job in this telemarketing environment that was 100% commission based, and that was really when I learned about how you can make money a different way. And then unfortunately around that time, my mum also started getting really sick, and eventually she passed away. So it went from earning just to earn a little bit of extras, to earn a bit of more money to get more luxury items, I guess, to then this was now we were earning to pay the rent and pay for food and these things. I had a younger brother as well we had to look after, so I'd gone from again, this was my next stepping stone. But luckily I kind of learned along the way how to make money in different ways. So we were able to cover the rent, but this was around about the time I then had to leave school, because looking after my brother's school, 2 jobs, it just wasn't really working. So at 15 I was away from the educational world, I guess, but I was in the working environment. Around about that same time, my younger brother's dad came back and kind of won custody of him. There was a small battle, but at 15 I couldn't do much to keep him. And he took him away to live in England, and I followed because I'd only ever known my little brother in my life. So I followed down to England and ended up working in like hotel chambermaiding and cleaning rooms and just doing anything I could there. Um, so I lived there for a small portion of time, but you could imagine, um, 14, 15, 16, 17, I was super vulnerable to everything else that was going on in the world. So unfortunately, I was in a position where I was sexually assaulted as well. So I went through a process of a court case and things. And this is really where I learned a lot about the system and how sexual abuse works and all this the process that follows it. And that was really where I felt like I needed to learn a lot more about that area. And this is really how I got into the process of working in human trafficking and fighting sexual abuse. During this whole process, I was working more in financial sectors, so I became a debt collector, and then I ended up as a bank manager, and eventually met my husband, who was in the Special Forces, the UK Special Forces. He was, kind of at the top of his game, and then he got injured in a terrible accident in Oman, and left the military after 16 years, so we had to find a new career for him. And that was around about the time we both decided to go into close protection. I'd learned that there was a lack of people able to help in the human trafficking environment. I wanted to do something that was a bit different to what I'd been doing, so we both went in to train as, well, he was already fully trained as a close protection officer, a bodyguard, whatever you want to call it, but he needed his civilian qualification, so we both went and done a course together. And around at that same time, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So once again, it was a new career, but pregnant bodyguards weren't in high demand at that time.
Yeah, right.
I ended up then learning a lot more about the back end of the security business. So I was doing a lot of the planning, logistics and things like that. So then when Arab Spring happened, which was the revolution in North Africa, my husband ended up spending a lot of time there, and he was in Libya for pretty much the most part of everything. So then that again changed the path of what we were doing, and Libya just became a new part of our world. Fast forward a little bit more, Dean was getting himself into more and more dangerous situations. So then we decided together that we were going to take him out of that. And how did it come up? Yeah, we said he needed a new challenge, and then we decided that he would do a bike ride. So he was going to cycle from Argentina to Alaska, which is 14,000 miles, and we were going to raise money for a mental health cause. So we moved into that, and that was where I furthered my work in financing, really, and learning more and more about how to ask for money and how you raised money. I used my experience from debt collecting from the bank and things, and just really learned about the process of asking for money. So we raised over $1 million on that campaign. And then that led us to move to America in the middle of COVID, and here we are.
Well, that's a hell of a resume. And the 14,000 miles happened, right?
Yeah, he broke it in 99 days, so he broke 2 world records doing it.
Wow. So what was that like?
I mean, this was something completely new. He was coming back from Libya. He'd gone from working with the Special Forces, where he had this team around him all the time, to working on his own. He'd been injured, so there was slight limitations to what his leg had been ripped. His ACL, his MCL, his hamstring was gone, so there was a lot of stuff he couldn't do. So he was in Libya for the most part on his own on certain operations, and he would come home and there would be like shirts just soaked in blood. There would be instances were happening that were just super close, like his 9 lives were really running out at this point. But I knew that he couldn't do a 9-to-5 job. He couldn't be sat behind an office desk. That would just kill him more than anything. So we needed to find some sort of adrenaline buzz that just wouldn't kill him. And then it was around about the same time, him and Prince Harry were friends, and Harry was setting up this mental health campaign that was bringing a collaboration of mental health charities together. So he said, would you mind doing it? If you were going to do it for this cause to try and raise money. So we were like, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. So the focus had to be on Dean, first of all, getting fit and being able to cycle this 150 miles a day minimum. So he had to keep his focus on that, and then I had to keep the focus on the fundraising. The issue that I actually came up with us was because Harry was involved, we were like under a microscope. It was completely. And he met Megan during this whole process, and then it got even worse for everything. So there was zero benefit to having a royal name attached to this, I can tell you. But what I had done was similar to what I'd done probably when I was 11. I took everything that we gained and just used it to learn as much as I could about that situation that we were in. So as an example, we had 11 non-profits under this campaign that we were working with. And I managed to secure a £200,000 donation from one organisation. But the royal household hadn't actually met with this organisation before, and they were a bit, I guess, a bit peeved that they hadn't got to them first. So we then had to go through a bit of a legal process where I had to then spend money to be able to accept this money. And that was really frustrating because you're just trying to raise money for a cause, but you've got all this red tape basically to go through and politics, everything to go through. So I learned so much about that process during that, about what there was involved when it came to actually asking for money, to receiving money, how to accept money. There was all sorts we had to think about that I probably was super naive to at the beginning.
Yeah. And then the Harry and Meghan thing happening in the middle of that doesn't help stuff, I wouldn't think.
No, I mean, well, I think they had their own thing going on, and because it's funny because when we started the whole process, we had very little social media, Dean didn't have a presence online whatsoever. He was completely, special forces, he was completely dark. So Dean went from that to being really put under a bit of a spotlight. And a lot of for example, when he broke the world record, he broke it on the 11th of May, and the wedding was on the 19th of May. So we flew home in time for the wedding, but then all the questions were, what was the wedding like? How was it? What was she wearing? Not one question about, well, you've just cycled 14 miles.
Yeah. Broke a world record in 14,000 miles, but how was the wedding?
Exactly.
And then they had didn't they do a Netflix thing or something? I don't follow it, so I just know there was a lot of drama there from what I hear. So, let's talk about so you're doing this stuff when you're the high profile bodyguards and different things. I mean, that's a unique thing. A lot of people listening to this probably don't have or need a bodyguard, but I still think it's fascinating is what kind of work are you doing? So apply that work to the work of the everyday person that what we do, whether it's in a conference room, a boardroom, whatever you have. What are some of the parallels there?
It's everything. Like the logistics and planning that go into security operation are the exact same things as if you were planning a takeover of a company, or if you were starting up a new business. And it's the same ingredients that goes into it, and it depends how well you do it as to what your outcome is, really. And I've watched many security companies fail over the year. We started our security company in 2010, and over that years, the amount of businesses I've seen go down. And the operators are some of the best that I've ever known. In the special forces world, they were, the number one. The skills that these guys have got is incredible, but the things that they lacked, and then they never went and found. The biggest one that I ever come across is their inability to understand their value and to actually send invoices and to be on top of their business and to treat it as a business, because they would be, this incredible skills of being able to rescue hostages out of hostile environments, or, take celebrities around the world, or whatever area of security you're working. You could be in a mine in Mexico, or you could be, on the red carpet in LA. When you're not running the actual business correctly, none of that can matter. And that's something I see all the time, is that they're not running the back end properly.
Yeah. I would assume most of the big celebrities these days have detail like yourselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, we stay well away from celebrities now, but most of them do have a level of security, and again, that's something. One of the jobs that we do now is we do vulnerability assessments. So we actually go and assess the security package that is existing within clients. And often it can be that a person either, normally people don't engage security until it's after the fact that they actually need it. That's the
Yeah.
disappointing. What we do is we provide vulnerability assessments. We'll go in and we'll check out a person's environment, check out everything from their children right up to their businesses, and see any holes, any loops, anything that people can get into. Obviously, cybersecurity is a huge issue for most people now. That's not actually what we do. We're more of the physical. But we
Yeah.
do look at that and see what they've got in place, and we can put them in the right direction. But a lot of the time when a security incident happens, we take like Kim Kardashian in Paris, when she was attacked in the hotel room in Paris, that was when she upped her security massively. Now, I would argue there was a bit of an advantage taken there because she didn't need what she went up to, but the fear was used to then say,
Yeah.
oh, look, we'll put this entire on. And a lot of the times, this type of people are hugely taken advantage of because they don't understand exactly what it is that they need, and people see them as a massive paycheck, and we can get whatever we want out of these people. They don't know what they're doing. So for us, that's a lot of what we do, is we'll go and assess what they've actually got and if they need it.
Yeah, and I assumed in today's world too, is if you're going to this part of the country or someplace in the world, there's pre-work that goes on too. So I know people that travel that may want to start investing in that, right? That they get a pre-travel plan. So if you're going to go overseas, maybe a company like yourselves or other ones, another guy I know, they will go ahead and pre-plan your trips on which part of the town to go to and which part not to, and transportation to have versus not have, right?
Yeah, and you know what me and Dean try and do is make your life as happy and as easy as possible, because the worst thing that can happen is when you engage security is they put the fear of God into you on a daily basis about how dangerous the world is, and that's not what we're doing. I mean, we've got 3 kids and we raise those kids to be security aware. They're not in fear, they're just aware of their surroundings, and they're conscious that they've got this peripheral vision that a lot of people are kind of lacking now. And that's what we're trying to teach our clients. So yeah, we'll do full planning on where they're going. If somebody's going to Africa on a safari, we'll want to do a full check on what it is they're doing, where they're going, the hotels they're staying at. But what we're doing as well is we're giving them advice on their social media use, and if they're posting in real time, or when they're posting, how they're posting it. Often I've looked at new clients, and before I would even meet them, I could look at just their public profile page, and I could tell you where their kids go to school, what time they leave, where they live, where their normal hangout is. I can find out so much about them just by what they're putting on the internet themselves. So what we'll try to do is say, look, some celebrities want to do that, so we don't want to stop them, but what we want to do is say, well, you don't need to post it on the second that you're there, or if you're going to put a picture of your house, not have the house number or not have the location on. Or then we'll look at their children, because their children are obviously usually the ones that people will look at to get information. And so many times we can find kids with Snapchat location services turned on, or school jumpers and images. There's so many things that we go through. A big part of what we do is child online exploitation as well. So that's a big part of our business.
Yeah, and that's all these kids know. I mean, you think about it, right? I mean, we didn't grow up with that stuff, but they do, and we talk to our kids about that. It's crazy. It's scary. I find it crazy, too, this Airbnb thing I see they're doing now is where these celebrities are renting their houses out, and you can come and stay at the back of their house. I mean, obviously, this is some sort of partnership, but I would think there'd have to be security involved in that. Have you seen that?
I actually haven't seen that, but it sounds a bit scary.
Yeah, I saw like Ashton Kutcher and I can't think of his wife's name. They have some farmhouse there in California, and like you can rent it and they'll be there. Like you can rent like the guest house or something. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. But anyway, that's for another podcast, I guess. So let's change the subject here and let's talk about success. How do you define that, and what does it mean to you?
Well, we've been through so much over the years, I guess, and when we can sit down with our kids and we know that what we're doing isn't affecting them in any negative way, I think that's when we know that we're being successful. What we do on a daily basis can be so varied. It can be from doing the security work. Dean's filming a TV show in Mexico right now. We can be doing things about human trafficking with the kids. We're doing something every day, but as long as I can sit down at night and sit down and say, are they happy? Are they safe? Are they, following the right path? And that to me is success. I know that the answer that required might be to do with financial, but that means absolutely nothing to our family.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, I think when you're young and professional, that's what you think about. But as you grow and mature, hopefully with your career, it's more than that. And that's why I always ask the question, because for me, success can certainly be part of that. It can be financial, but I think there's a bigger picture there with, time with family, time with friends.
If you focus on the financial side of it, I think that might end up being a failure for you, because I think you've got to look at, what is happiness, what is going to make you sit down every night and say, I'm good here, this is awesome. And I don't think having piles of money is ever going to actually do that. I think, the seeing that the kids are happy, seeing that every day we're doing something positive to benefit the world. If we're seeing those things, and I think that success is, and those financial gains come. I do believe fully in putting out to the universe is exactly what you need. And I think that, often I'm asked, how do you do the things you do? How do you get the network that you've got? And, we're just out there. I think if you want something, it's what have you got to offer other people? I say that, don't go looking for what they can do for you. What can you do for that person? And if you're doing it expecting something in return, then don't do it. Just don't do it just to give, and it will come back.
I 100% agree with that. What you put out will come back. Be careful what you put out, right? Talk about the gift of high expectations. I assume you do that as a parent, but also just for yourself. When you hear the gift of high expectations, what comes to mind for you?
Do you know, we've got this really terrible habit in this family of never celebrating our successes. Every time we achieve something, it doesn't matter if we're breaking records. I got my MBE from King Charles last month, and we didn't stop to celebrate anything. And we said, when are we going to do it? And I was actually speaking to a friend of ours, Bedros, and he was saying that this mindset that we've got doesn't allow us to celebrate because we're not at the end. We're not at the end gate, so we keep going because that might be like a little tick in the box, but we've got the next one to achieve. We've got the next one to achieve. I believe that in our household, we all think that exactly the same way. We do have to kind of stop and go, wait a second, let's high five each other over the next, what we're doing now.
Yeah. So what was that award you got again?
It was an MBE, so member of the most excellent order of the British Empire.
Wow. So tell us about that. What is that? It's a big deal.
Yeah, I received it. So it was King Charles's first awards, and it was for my services to vulnerable women and mental health awareness. So I believe it was for the work that when I was speaking to him when I received it, it was for the work within the human trafficking. So I don't know exactly what it gets you, but I got a little medal and got to meet him in July.
And a nice little weekend with the family there, right?
Yeah, it was lovely actually. It was the day he got coronated in Scotland, so there was a second coronation for him in Scotland, so we had a full day, and lovely.
That's awesome. Talk about your book, She Who Dares. I know that recently came out, so let's spend a little time on that. Brag on that book for a minute.
Yeah, She Who Dares came from, so Dean wrote his book after the bike ride Relentless, and when he wrote that, I'm obviously featured a little bit in that. So a few people had said, well, when's Alana's book coming out? And I'd actually I've been writing since I was a little girl. I just stopped when Mum died, and I actually then, during COVID, I picked it up again and thought I'm going to keep. And as I was writing She Who Dares, and I was writing the stories about some of the things that happened, like if I talked to people about it, and they were like, that happened to me, or I've been through the same thing, and I was having these conversations, and I was nervous about putting the book out, because you're literally putting out your life to the world, and then the more
vulnerable.
the more people I spoke to, the more I was like, no, this does need to be shared, and it's been great. Like every time I'm receiving a message about somebody who's been through something similar, or that hasn't maybe told other people about what they're going through, or they're struggling with something, and they're able to read it and pull from it, that's such a blessing to be able to do that.
So how have you, through all that, I mean, through the blessings and the success, and obviously we talk a lot about success on the circuit of success, but how do you how do you find yourself to dig yourself up out of a hole or pick yourself up off the ground, right? You get knocked down. We got to get right back up. How do you do that personally to find success in your life?
I in How to Ask for Money, the money book that I've wrote, I talk a lot about failure because I do see failure as the stepping stones of failure is a blessing. We're learning every single time. We're only failing if we're just together. Our knocks. The one thing that I found from I fail, I pick myself up, I go through it, and it's not always easy. I always give myself a little bit of time. I give myself the 24 hours, especially with the big stuff. Something big happens. Dean will always say, take a breath, sleep, and then deal with it. And normally within 24 hours, I've fixed it or came up with a solution. Um, but I also think forgiveness is a big one. I hear a lot of people holding on to anger and resentment and the pain of things that they've been through. I feel like I've always felt like I can forgive a lot easier, and I don't hold on to any resentment and anger. I think it just eats away at you, and I've seen people doing it, and I've seen how
Yeah.
sad it can make them and how lonely it can make them. I feel like you don't maybe necessarily need to the evil that someone's put on you doesn't need to stay with you. You can release that. You can get rid of it and put it away from you. Forgive what's happened and move on.
So how do you do that though? So I mean, that's easy to say, I think, right? And you've had experience with that. But if I'm a person right now that's in this dark moment or having this issue at work or at home, I think they might say, yeah, right, my deal's different. So how do I put it away? How do I just put it away, put it in the box, put it in the shelf and move on? How do I do that?
Listen, the more it stays with you, the more it's going to hold on to everything that you could possibly be in the future, and the more that you've written. It's not easy to say, no way, what you've just done to me was the worst thing, but I'm going to forgive you and I'm going to move on. But you have to do it for yourself and your family, because every minute that's holding on to you in the pain and the resentment and the hatred, it's going to go on to the next generation as well. And I don't care if it's to do with sexual assault, if it's PTSD, if it's, somebody's robbed you, whatever it might be. If you're holding on to that anger and pain and hatred and all those horrible negative feelings inside you, it is going on to your next generation 100%. So to say that it's not that easy to let go of, it's your responsibility to let go of it. It's your responsibility for the next, your little people, to say, no, we're not going to do it. And yeah, it's not an easy thing. I know so many people who kind of cling on to the anger for dear life because it's become part of them. You have to find that outlet to pull it. For me, I'm always looking at the future. I'm looking at the bigger picture. I've got 3 little people that 100% need me to guide them along the way. But there's also a world of people out there that need help. Every single day I see people that need help. And every time I feel anger or resentment or pain or anything, it stops me being able to help them. So I look at it, it's not about me, it's about everyone else around me and everything that I can do. So if you're kind of holding on to it, I hate to say it, it can be a little bit selfish, so let it go.
Yeah. And again, that letting go part, is that it's a self-talk, do you think? I mean, how do you truly convince yourself? Because, I mean, I've had those issues that follow you around a little bit, and I think I'm pretty good at shrugging them off. I call it the bounce back theory, where the most successful people that I've seen get bad news, but they bounce back really, really quickly. Right? But then you also have people that hold on to it for days. So again, I would ask almost the same question though, is how? Like, how do I release that to where it doesn't become part of my everyday life?
Again, I mean, I can only speak from me, and I can say that I've seen people have gone through some of the most horrendous things. I've dealt with people in awful circumstances. And I never say that my pain's worse than anybody else's. I think that I hear that a lot, that people think, well, yeah, but you didn't deal with it as bad as I did, or you didn't get it as bad as I see it in two. I've watched people that have been through sexual assault in the household, let's just take that, and maybe the girls have gone through it, but maybe the sons watched it or witnessed it or had to listen to it. He never maybe physically experienced it, but I've watched the girls get over it and the guys struggle to get over it. Now, whose pain was worse? Like, who was actually going through worse? I don't think there's any way to say who went through worse, but one's managed to get over it and one's still struggling to get past it. And I think that the people that I have seen pull through it have got a higher purpose. They've got other things that are more important than their pain that they went through. And I do feel like if we could get out and we can see that there's so much more that you're needed for. You can't be stuck there. You have to keep moving forward. Yeah, do I still feel pain from things that have gone on in the past? Yeah, but I don't give myself time to think about it. I feel like I use that energy and know that I was put through those tests for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you tell yourself now? I mean, knowing that stuff now and getting to the other side of some pretty, horrific things in your life, what advice would you give that 10, 15, 20-year younger person, younger self?
I go back a lot, I'll do, if I'm doing a lot of meditation, I kind of do like to go back to them and give them a little hug from my older self. And I think that I feel like if we done that a bit more as well, that we can go back and I see people criticizing themselves a lot. We can be critical about our bodies, who we are. And I often say, like, go to your deep state and go back to that little girl or that little boy and say that same thing to them. It's a lot more difficult to criticize that way. So for me, it would be just, you are, it sounds so cliche and so cheesy, but you are enough. Like little kids right now are comparing themselves to absolutely everything that's out there, and it's really sad. And for little Alana, first of all, I would just give her huge amounts of hugs and tell her that she is special and that she is required in this earth for so much more than what she's going through right now.
Yeah, that's great. Just a big hug, right? Sometimes you just need a big hug. Yeah. My son needed a big hug. My second son turned 16 this past weekend, and it was Labor Day yesterday, and so the DMV was closed. He was supposed to get his driver's license today, and then something went wrong through the system because it needed 3 business days. Well, Labor Day doesn't count as a business day, so we had to give him a big hug today. But my point to that story is sometimes we get disappointing news, right? And I'm a firm believer in, yes, it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay that you're mad that you're not getting your driver's license. But let's also try to flip the script on that and say, you know what, but there's a plan for that, right? It was raining pretty hard this morning. Maybe God didn't want to put you in a vehicle during your test during that, right? So always trying to find, in my opinion, that silver lining, that one thing when I'm disappointed of why the plan was. It is what it is. The plan's written. Now I just got to deal with it. Again, okay to be upset, but I got to deal with it. Thoughts on that?
100%. Like, you're meant to be where you're meant to be when you're meant to be there. It's all, there is another plan, and that disappointment of that, I was going to buy that house and the sale fell through, or that happened for a reason, and you'll know that 5-10 years, and you look back and you think, whoa, imagine if we'd done that and that had happened and that had gone through. Usually it becomes clear eventually. And I think trust in the process, put in the work, do what you need to do to make it happen. And then if it's not happening and you've got an ability to change it, then go for it. But things like that, the driving license place is shut, but also understand that my husband's got a real terrible habit of comparing his situation to our 12-year-old daughter, who can't go to the mall that day because her friend, has to go somewhere else, and then she's stuck at home and she can't go till tomorrow, and it's the worst thing in the world. And then Dino give the list of things that he's currently dealing with. Well, there's people stuck in Afghanistan that I'm trying to evacuate, and there's this. I'm like, Dean, that's your problems.
Right.
This is as big as that, so we don't have to project.
My problems are bigger than your 12-year-old going to the mall problems, but still, for her, that's her Afghanistan getting somebody out of their problem, right? You mentioned meditation a little bit ago, so walk us through that. A lot of people listen to this. We talk about it all the time. How do you meditate? Why has it been so important in your life?
So this was something that 1000% did not come easy to me. I found it really, really difficult to just be present with myself. And then I read The Warrior Mindset, and I learned a little bit more about the way the samurai worked, and that was something that really resonated with me. I loved how they were able to switch it on and off, and that everything I'd seen about meditation up to then was about, sitting for 20 minutes, sitting for 30 minutes, having all that time. I really struggled with that. What I liked about the samurai method was being able to switch it on instantly and switch between your waves really, really quickly, and just have those moments. And how I've used that now is when I'm feeling that overwhelm, everything's too much here, there's so much going on, I can just do that little moment of just bringing myself back, centering myself, and being like, okay, we can move. And we can do the 20-minute ones, or we can do, give ourselves some real me time, but I feel like those little instant moments are
Yeah.
better for me.
Yeah. I would agree. I think I've had to learn over the years. If you told me sit down and just like kind of breathe or think about now don't think for 20 minutes, it's impossible. But I what I have found is I've built that muscle up that 5 minutes is more than enough time to change your life with meditation.
Yeah,
and then you'll get used to doing 10 and 15 and 20 minutes. But I still don't sit down for 20 minutes and just meditate, right? I'm that 5, 10, maybe 15 if I'm lucky, just because my brain goes to me different places.
And I think you've got to understand what the purpose of doing it is. For me, it is just to recenter myself and pull myself back in and just breathe everything together again and tackle it again. And sometimes I might need that bit longer, and sometimes that moment will do. So it's up to finding your own positioning. But I've never been a fan of the kind of every day at 10 o'clock I'm going to sit down for 20 minutes. No, that's not me. I need to be able to do it sporadically and on the move.
Do it on your time.
Yeah.
So if I were to follow you around with a camera for a few days and see something, numerous things maybe, that are day in, day out, you do not fail on those. You will not miss those. Are there any habits in there that you think are important for people to know?
Making my bed. That's something that I think it was Admiral McCraven who wrote the book Make Your Own Bed, and I've followed it ever since, and every single day without fail that bed is made. And I think that it is such an important habit that the kids do now, Dean does, because it does, as he says, it gives you that first achievement of the day, but it gives you that, for me, to see an unmade bed, it's almost like you are setting yourself up for a bit of a failure for the day.
Yeah.
Like you've not got that discipline, and that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of the day, is make sure that it's all done. So I've and the principal now that make her bed. I make my bed if I'm in a hotel. I make my bed if I'm in someone else's place. It doesn't matter. The bed is made when we get up, because we're up and we're ready to go.
Yeah. What's fun, I was smiling when you said that, because I was on this golf trip I've mentioned a couple of times last week. I'm with me and 7 other guys, so 8 of us out there. And we all had our own rooms in this little cottage thing. And one of the guys comes by and we're talking, and I'm starting to make my bed. And he's like, "You make your bed when we're on a trip like this?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, man." I'm like, and I wasn't perfect. I'm sure I missed it a day or two while I was there, but I'm like, yeah. I'm like, even if I play bad golf today, I don't do well, whatever, I've at least accomplished that, and I come home to a nice, tidy, clean room. It just feels better, right? Because I do believe that. I know it's silly to be talking about making a bed, but our kids were like that. We're like that with them too. You've at least accomplished something, and you come back to a tidy space. Because if you have a bad day, man, the last thing I want to do is come back to a place that's just disheveled already.
Yeah, and there's something about your mindset. The bed then goes to the room, to everything else, to your towel, on the floor.
Yeah.
If you can take your own responsibility, even if you do have a housekeeper or help, these are your responsibilities. You pick up your own clothes, you tidy up your own room, you put your things away. Everything in our house, everything is ship shape. When we see messes, I think it transcends through the rest of your life. If you're leaving a mess in a truck behind you, it goes to everything else too. So sort your own stuff out.
Yeah. What did Mother Teresa say? Sweep your own front porch. If everybody did that, the world would be a lot better place, right?
It's 1,000% true. Where I'm from in Aberdeen, my great auntie Molly, who's my biggest inspiration, she died in 2020 when she was 95, and
wow.
She was the one who kind of taught me what some of those tiny little things. Aberdeen used to be such a clean little town. It's a city, sorry, but the main street was spotless. Everybody cleaned their own front pavement, and now it's almost like that's not my responsibility. I'm not touching it. I'm not doing it. And then there's just garbage all over the streets, and it's just being left to. There's a generation that knew what they were doing there.
Yeah. So last couple questions here. If you, when you hear the words and see this symbol right here in the microphone for those watching, achieving a future greater than your past, what comes to mind when you hear that?
That's probably similar to my keep moving forward. Where I'm from is 1,000% where I started, but it's not who I'm going to be and what I'm doing in the future.
Yeah.
The future for me every day is bigger and bigger, and it includes more and more about helping other people, and that's the main purpose for us.
I love it. All right, I'm pulling my phone out here to get your Instagram up. We're going to play the Instagram game. So pick a number between 1 and 10.
4.
Okay, 4. Pick a number between 1 and 3.
2.
Well, this is perfect. She did not pay me to do this, but the post was of your book, the cover of your book. And it says, "Have you got your copy yet? She Who Dares out now." Kelsey Sharon, she's got a little post on here about it. She's excited. So again, talk about that. Why should somebody go out and pick it up and read it?
Gosh, Kelsey's my #1 fan. That's awesome. It's a book that is good for men and women. I love that I've had people from Jack Carr reviewing it to Kelsey to, it doesn't matter who you are. It's got something in it for everyone, I hope. And it gives a look. Or I just say it's the main theme that I'm getting about the book is pick yourself back up.
Yeah, well, and that's true, right? Because if you get knocked down and you don't get back up, well, then you're guaranteed a loss. So what's the worst thing? Just get back up, do it one more time. It works. So where can our listeners find more of you?
At alanastott.com and Alana Stott across every social media, YouTube, etc. We've just started our own podcast as well, which is Behind the Scene, which releases on Monday, which is the 11th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we will put that in the show notes and send people over there, and we'll check it out. Well, Alana, thanks so much for being with me today. It's been awesome having you on the Circuit of Success.
Thank you so much for having me.